Now I have a question to one of your long-term holdings, Ryman Healthcare in New Zealand, which has a great, I think, tailwind from the demographics. And I was wondering how you think about, because it has two sort of businesses up. You got the care business, and then you got the real estate development business, which is pretty much dependent also on the interest rates environment, which is probably increasing a bit, and also the real estate market, which is also dependent, obviously, on how interest rates are going to move. So I was wondering, what's the view on the perspective on that, and will Ryman still be able to, even if the interest rate would increase tremendously, be able to still set the prices?
Yeah, well, it's great to have a question on Ryman. It's probably one of my favorite companies in the world, if not the favorite, and it's because they have the most incredible mission that I've ever come across. I mean, we were talking about Trupanion earlier, and I think care of pets is a pretty important mission, but Ryman's mission is taking care of mum and dad when they can no longer take care of themselves. They build and operate retirement villages, and it's a business which across the world is completely dysfunctional. The story of the retirement industry is that after the Second World War, there was a sort of new prosperity in the West, and previously when old people got old, probably they weren't taken particularly good care of. But in this sort of new prosperity, hospitals were being built, and of course, old people were then being taken into hospitals when they were when they couldn't take care of themselves. But that didn't work because they weren't getting better. They weren't going to get better. They were approaching end of life, so they couldn't stay in the hospital. It was too expensive. They had to go somewhere else. So what effectively has happened all over the world is you have these sort of institutions that get built, which are kind of like a hospital, in that they take care of the physical well-being of the person, so assuming it's well run, it's sort of clean, there's a nurse on hand if you have a problem, the room is taken care of, you get changed, all of the kind of the physical needs are well taken care of. But nothing is done to make life enjoyable and worth living. There's nothing done for the spiritual side of life, and that's why anyone with an older relation, probably everyone here, knows that the very last thing an old person wants to do is to go into a retirement home, because they know that's basically game over. So they kind of push it to the very last possible minute when they've had like the 10th fall, and when it's basically the end, and then they go in and they've more or less given up already, and typically will die quite soon afterwards. And Ryman has sort of taken this sort of paradigm and created a sort of like a Disney type experience in their villages, where the villages are fun places, where there's a lot of love, where there's a lot of friendship, where there's a lot of things happening. And it's just, I mean, if you visit one of these villages, it's one of the most moving experiences you can imagine. So I think it's one of the most incredible businesses I've ever come across. And your question was about interest rates. Obviously there's a need for old people to be taken care of. I mean, it's probably one of the single biggest unmet needs in our society today. So irrespective of what inflation does, interest rates do, or whatever, this is a business which I think will be doing very well. But as it happens, I think it's actually also exceptionally well suited to inflation and high interest rates, because I mentioned it earlier on that the best type of business to own is a capital light business in an inflationary scenario. Now you might think, Ryman doesn't sound very capital light. It builds these huge villages. They cost billions of New Zealand dollars to build. But the super interesting thing is, once they're built, Ryman retains ownership of the village, but sells an occupation right to the residents. So the resident pays money to Ryman, and in return gets the right to stay in the village for however long they need to. So basically, Ryman participates from any appreciation in the value of that asset. In fact, that's one of its main sources of earnings, but doesn't carry the capital. The resident carries the capital. So I think it's an ideal business for an inflationary scenario.